slogans and calls mainstream media fake news. Here's a couple of the instances that I think are really, really scary and dangerous and make me embarrassed to say that these people are journalists. Here's one of the instances that we ended up seeing that was called out. This was a New York Times article. It said the other option is death. New York starts sharing of ventilators. To keep coronavirus patients breathing, hospitals are pioneering a little tested method. This is the New York Times. They are making people believe right now that we're sharing ventilators. Well, when we looked into the article, you see the pictures, you see the discussions. It goes on to say a New York hospital system has begun treating 2 patients instead of 1 on some ventilators, a desperate measure that could help alleviate a shortage of the critical breathing machines and help hospitals around the country respond to the surge of coronavirus patients expected in the coming weeks. Inside of the article was a tweet that somebody put out of a photo of 2 patients sharing one of these respirators. And it said, this is what we are down to, splitting ventilators and facing serious dilemmas like choosing who will be actually ventilated when everybody should. Bloody seriously, never thought it was so bad. It goes on to create this terror that we're basically making life-to-death decisions. We don't have room to put some people on the ventilators. We're having to split them up. And remember, this is off-label usage. It got so bad that even Deborah Birx, who's one of the people in the head of the task force on this whole issue for Donald Trump, had to call out the news and say, please stop it. You're scaring people. Take a look.
We were reassured and meeting with our colleagues in New York that there are still ICU beds remaining, and there's still significant over 1,000 or 2,000 ventilators that have not been utilized yet. Please, for the reassurance of people around the world, to wake up this morning and look at people talking about creating DNR situations, do not resuscitate situations for patients. There is no situation in the United States right now that warrants that kind of discussion. You can be thinking about it in a hospital. Certainly many hospitals talk about this on a daily basis. But to say that to the American people, to make the implication that when they need a hospital bed, it's not going to be there, or when they need that ventilator, it's not going to be there. We don't have an evidence of that right now. And it's our job collectively to assure the American people that it's our collective job to make sure that doesn't happen.
What is she talking about? Is she lying? What do you mean? We have evidence. We saw pictures of ventilators being shared. The New York Times reported on it, Deborah. Except here's the problem. You had to read practically till the end of that article by the New York Times to see this paragraph. The hospital has not yet run out of ventilators, but Dr. Baitler said it was better to try the technique now than when you have absolutely no choice. Is that a bit of misreporting? I mean, when we think about the false news that's being slammed on things that the high wire has provided for you to say the other option is death, is the other option death? Or is the other option one of the ventilators that's sitting across the room unused right now, which happens to be the case? You see, this was a publicity stunt. They put together the fact that you could divide it. It's something we could do in the future, but the New York Times represented it as fact. We had another situation with CBS News. Here was the report we saw coming out of New York.
New York's governor says FEMA gave the state 400 ventilators. To that, he said this.
What am I going to do with 400 ventilators when I need 30,000?
Now, Andrew Cuomo may think he needs 30,000, but the idea is that we're running out of beds, like Deborah Birx said. We're looking at videos. We're running out of ventilators. Look, that entire room is packed. People are really sick. Except that while we were talking about New York and we were looking at what we thought was an ER in New York packed with people and a shortage of ventilators, look, what was actually reported was that that wasn't New York. In fact, that was a totally different country. Look at this.
The sheer numbers of people succumbing to the coronavirus is overwhelming every hospital in northern Italy.
Apparently CBS stole footage that had taken place in Italy, a place that ultimately has already described itself as having a terrible hospital system, that it is incapable of handling this issue. That's the same room. It's unbelievable. The same people. A CBS News channel tried to make you afraid of the epidemic that was crashing upon New York by showing you something happening in a country with far less resources.
So this makes me to think and wonder if they have to take news clip from Italy and other countries that where the hospitals and the medical situation is almost sometimes rated like a third world situation, for them to use those clips and pictures to instill fear in the American people and the world to look at us who are here in America, then that leads me to think there's no real epidemic, because they shouldn't have the need to want to use pictures and videos from other hospitals from the other nations of the world. If this is really happening here, all they gotta do is go to one of the hospitals they claim in America or in New York that is such an epidemic and they're running out of beds, they don't have room. Then just take your news crew to one of those hospitals and just do the video from there. How come they don't even have any hospital scenes? Like we actually have video footage of hospitals and people and things in Italy and other nations. But in America, when you watch the local news, you will just see one doctor isolated in a room in a wall, and he'll be telling you, we've been working for overtime, we don't have enough beds. They are interviewing doctors, but they're not actually showing the scene, what's actually happening. They are telling you the doctors are being interviewed one-on-one by themselves. Makes you wonder. So how is it we can see news media footage of what actually going on behind the scene on the front line in the hospitals in Italy, but we don't see any going on in the hospitals in America? We just see a doctor sitting in a room in a wall and he's telling you what's going on, or they interview a nurse and she's telling you, but they're by themselves, but they're not showing you any hospital scenes. Makes you wonder. Now, I'm not saying this coronavirus is fake or it's not happening, but the proportion in which it has been blown out is what I'm questioning. And the motives behind those news media prostitutes, the mainstream, as Donald Trump called them, fake news. I'm questioning their motives, their propaganda, their agenda. What exactly are they pushing and why?
At what we thought was an ER in New York packed with people and a shortage of ventilators. Look, what was actually reported was that wasn't New York. In fact, that was a totally different country. Look at this.
The sheer numbers of people succumbing to the coronavirus is overwhelming every hospital in northern Italy.
Apparently CBS stole footage that had taken place in Italy, a place that ultimately has already described itself as having a terrible hospital system, that it is incapable of handling this issue. That's the same room. It's unbelievable. The same people. A CBS News channel tried to make you afraid of the epidemic that was crashing upon New York by showing you something happening in a country with far less resources. This was outrageous, and it was so bad that CBS ended up having to apologize. Here's what they said. CBS News admits mistake after airing footage of overcrowded Italian hospital in report about NY.
Hello, CBS News admits mistake. No, the only reason why they're admitting this mistake, because they were caught in the mistake. If they weren't caught, that mistake, that message would have spread across the globe and would have continued to push their agenda, their propaganda, which is fear and panic. That's number one. Number two, why should you, CBS, have the need to use a footage from an overcrowded hospital in Italy if you claim there are hospitals in America that are overcrowded? Can't you just send your reporters and your crew there to actually report what's actually going on what's actually going on at the scene in the hospitals, what's actually going on at the ground zero in the hospital? But because there is no such thing, that's why you have to use footage from other hospitals like Australia, like other hospitals in Italy. Because if this was actually happening as you guys are pushing, guess what? There will be no need for you to go and get footage from someplace else and use it, because you got busted in your lies and your propaganda. Now you claim it's a mistake. It's not a mistake. You was caught in the mistake. Because if this was actually happening, you will have no need to use somebody else's footage. You will use your own. But because it ain't happening, you had to look for somebody else's footage to use to continue to push your propaganda. But the law will continue to allow you guys to be exposed and caught in your lies every step of the way until you step down, until you shut up, or until God shut all you mainstream media propaganda people, shut you up and raise up people, raise up journalists with integrity. Are there no good journalists in America? Are there no journalists with integrity and respect and backbones? Or are you all got all of you guys are nothing more than a puppet in the hand of the cabals? A platform used by George Soros and Bill Gates and the likes to push their one world, new world order agenda. Are you guys have no morals? You have no conscience? Are you even human beings? My goodness, what a world we're living in.
Crowded Italian hospital in report about NYC. Let me be clear about this. Many of you know I was a producer on the daytime talk show The Doctors. For who? CBS. In fact, two other of the producers here, my executive producer and one of our field producers, also came from the CBS talk show The Doctors. We work together. I know how you choose your footage. And by the way, footage does not just suddenly appear in your editing system from Italy and no one knows it's from Italy. It's marked Italian footage, crisis in Italy. It's going to have that type of moniker on it. Somebody purposefully took it and put it in a piece about New York. Maybe the editor did it, but then you had the producer producing the piece and the field producer that was also producing the piece. And then they had to go through their supervisor producer that looked at it. And then it went to the executive producer and then ultimately the director of the show. What I'm telling you is this is not a mistake by one person. This doesn't happen. There are stopgaps to make sure you don't make mistakes like this. Somebody at CBS thought they could slide this past the people, because I guarantee you at least 7 to 10 different people on that show got to make a decision whether they ran with that or not.
So do you see the average American, do you see for CBS to willfully and deliberately, knowingly use that clip to show to the American people that this is what's happening in the hospitals in America? For them to do that deliberately, that means they are telling you, the average American, you are so dumb. We have so brainwashed you. You don't even have common sense. You won't pick up this mistake. So we're gonna throw this lies down your throat because we know you're gonna eat it up. Because you take our words like it's gospel and you take it to the bank to cash it. Well, guess what? Their words are being bounced back. They got bounced back check, like a NSF check. Insufficient funds. CBS, and all the rest of you. Your time is up. Your propaganda and your lies and your agenda will all be exposed. And may God use your own weapon and your own platform to expose you, shut you down, bring you down.
Stopgaps to make sure you don't make mistakes like this. Somebody at CBS thought they could slide this past the people, because I guarantee you at least 7 to 10 different people on that show got to make a decision whether they ran with that or not. Let's move on. As if, I wish that was the only case, but perhaps one of the most egregious cases at a time where news networks keep saying, we're in this together, we got to make this sacrifice together. It appears that some people want to tear us apart and want to accuse others of things going on. I would hope when you do that, you at least get it right. Take a look at this.
In terms of the happy talk we've had on this front from the federal government, there is no sign that the Navy hospital ships that the president made such a big deal of, the Comfort and the Mercy, there's no sign that they'll be anywhere on site helping out anywhere in the country for weeks yet. The president said when he announced that those ships would be put into action against the COVID-19 epidemic, he said one of those ships would be operational in New York Harbor by next week. That's nonsense. It will not be there next week.
Really, Rachel? Where did that report come from? How'd you know that? Because guess what happened just 1 week later?
In a few moments, the crew of the Navy hospital ship USNS Comfort, which is really something, will embark for New York City, where they will join the ranks of tens of thousands of amazing doctors, nurses, and medical professionals who are battling to save American lives.
The Statue of Liberty greeting the USNS Comfort as waiting crowds fail to social distance.
I mean, I don't know what you do with that, Rachel. I don't know how you move forward. And by the way, I don't know how people keep tuning in if you're going to be that dramatic about something, saying it's absolutely preposterous that the president's going to deliver. And I think at one point she even said those ships are in dry dock. There's no way they can even get into the water. And yet there it was, pulling up in the harbor as was promised. You see, this type of reporting, it's dangerous. It's dangerous because we lose credibility with the people. And if we're supposed to live in a free country that has free media. But I've told you before, this is media being funded by the pharmaceutical industry. Clearly, there's an agenda. And if you're watching the commercials between every one of those false reports that we just pointed out, you will see pharma ads for drugs. Yep. That's a really big problem. And I think more and more people are waking up and less people are trusting mainstream news. It got to be such a major issue last week that a hashtag may actually reveal something that we would have never seen. The hashtag was hashtag film your hospitals. Citizen journalists took to the streets because they just didn't buy the sensationalism anymore. Here were the videos we all started seeing appear all over the internet.
Elmhurst Hospital, the center of the coronavirus outbreak, and it looks like a ghost town. Look at that. Nobody.
This is James Street Hospital. It's like a ghost town in the hospital.
I've been here for an hour. Not one person has walked up to the tents. Not one.
Hey man, is it true? Is it pretty swamped inside there? There ain't no testing tents. That's the emergency entrance to Grady Hospital right there.
And it's empty. A little odd, don't you think?
Oh my God, admissions. Totally empty. Look at this. Totally empty. This is admissions. The big panic of admissions on. Look.
Look at more people are taking videos because no one's believing the fake media. You see all the ambulances that are on the block down there? They're all parked. They've been there for an hour.
Respiratory lab. Look at this. Oh my God. This is crazy. Absolutely.
This is what you saw in the news. Where's the line with the tent? Nobody's here on the tent. Look at all these parked ambulances just for show. The news cameras. None of them are in action.
You would actually think there was a war going on, seriously. This is crazy, crazy, crazy stuff.
Now I want to give my own opinion. Do you see? Number one, they told us to be in lockdown, right? They know the reason why they told you to stay home and not go to work or go out in the street unless you're going for essential stuff. They told you that because they don't want people, average American citizens, those who still have sense, those who have awakened and came out of the matrix and they have their senses still attached. Those average people will begin to take to the streets to see exactly what they're watching on the news. Is it comparative to what they're seeing in the physical and the natural? And they took to the streets, and guess what? This is what they saw. Now some people come and say, well, are you saying? I'm not even saying the virus doesn't exist. I know it does. I believe 100% it was created in the laboratory and it was released. I also believe there is a combination, there's a correlation or some kind of linkage of this virus to the 5G. I believe that 100%. So whatever the people are dying of, dying from, or dying off in the hospitals all over the world, it is not at the epidemic, at the rate, at the level, at the panic, at the fear, at the paranoia that the mainstream media has pushed down our throat. That is what I'm questioning. That's number one. Number two, they told about 70 to 80% of Americans are home from work and schools and colleges and universities are sitting home. Some people have the privilege they can work from home. That's great. So while you are all home, that gave them the opportunity and the privilege to go, number one, to install 5G into all of those empty buildings. Because if they told you that they're going to install 5G, there would have been a massive protest against it. Most people would have protested against it. Number two, they have people dressed up in those, I call them space suits. You know, those medical gear from head to toe. In all of those buildings, allegedly, supposedly, they are sterilizing and sanitizing and cleaning the buildings from corona. Do you know what exactly they are spraying in the streets and in those buildings? Do you know exactly what they are using to wipe down? Let's think. They're going to install the 5G while you in lockdown. They're going to clean and spray and sterilize the area with God knows what. And then let's say 2-3 weeks or 2-3 months, they lift the lockdown. Everybody go back to their schools and to the jobs, and people start coming down with something else. Prophet Sadhu just prophesied on March 29, 2020, that a greater than corona is coming. So that makes sense. That when you remove the lockdown and you go back to your school and to your buildings, you're going to get something. If it's not from the 5G, it's going to be from those things, those chemicals they are using to supposedly, allegedly sterilize and clean the buildings. I'm just saying, and this is my own 2 cents. You ain't got to agree and you ain't got to like. But those of you who agree, do me a great favor. Share this video with everyone and anyone who will listen. And those who don't want to listen, when you share with them, don't argue. I don't argue no more. When I send with people to say they don't agree, I say no problem. Let he who have ears to hear. You don't agree, no problem. Keep it moving. But those who need to hear it, send it.